Television used to be a place of comfort, familiar faces, warm living rooms, the quiet assurance that nothing truly dangerous would cross the screen. Then, in the 1970s, something crept in after dark. These were made-for-TV horror movies that didn't rely on blood or spectacle. Broadcast straight into family homes, they blurred the line between entertainment and intrusion. Tonight, we're revisiting the most disturbing made-for-TV horror movies of the 1970s. Stories that didn't just interrupt programming, they invaded it. Directed by Herb Wallerstein and starring Bo Svensson, Sylvia Sidney, and Clint Walker, Snowbeast is a deceptively effective slice of made-for-TV creature horror that understands one crucial rule: isolation does most of the work. Set in a ski resort cut off by winter storms, the film traps its characters in a pristine landscape that slowly turns hostile, quiet, and predatory. Svensson plays a local lawman tasked with keeping order as something massive begins stalking the surrounding mountains. Hirschman resists spectacle, revealing the creature sparingly and allowing tension to accumulate through suggestion. Snow-covered slopes become empty voids. Tree lines feel watchful. The silence between attacks stretches longer than expected, making each appearance of the beast feel earned rather than routine. Veteran actress Sylvia Sidney brings an unexpected layer of gravitas, grounding the film in weary realism, while Clint Walker's imposing presence adds physical authority without turning the story into action. What makes Snowbeast effective isn't the monster's design, it's the atmosphere of vulnerability. Civilization feels thin here, reduced to flickering lights and locked doors that suddenly feel inadequate against the wilderness pressing in. As a TV movie, Snowbeast understands restraint. It doesn't overwhelm, it waits, and by placing its horror in a place designed for leisure and escape, it quietly suggests something far more disturbing, that even familiar destinations can turn feral when the world gets quiet enough. Directed by John Llewellyn Moxey and starring Barbara Stanwyck alongside Kitty Wynn, The House That Would Not Die is a classic haunted house story, sharpened by television intimacy and generational unease. From the moment two women inherit a sprawling country mansion, the film establishes a slow, creeping sense of intrusion. The feeling that the past has grown tired of staying silent. Stanwyck delivers a commanding performance as an older woman who approaches the supernatural with skepticism rather than hysteria. Her grounded presence anchors the film, allowing the haunting to unfold gradually instead of erupting into theatrics. Moxey leans heavily on atmosphere. Long hallways, unused rooms, and a house that seems to listen when no one is speaking. What sets the film apart is its emotional undercurrent. This is not just a ghost story, but a meditation on buried cruelty and inherited guilt. Objects move without explanation. Sounds echo from empty spaces, and the house's resistance to its new occupants feels purposeful, as though it has chosen who may and may not feel safe within its walls. As a made-for-TV horror film, The House That Would Not Die understands how to create dread through proximity. This isn't a cinematic mansion looming on a distant hill. It's a domestic space broadcast directly into living rooms, where the idea of refuge slowly collapses. Directed by John Llewellyn Moxey, A Taste of Evil is one of the most quietly chilling occult TV movies of the decade, anchored by the uneasy tension between modern skepticism and inherited belief. The film follows a woman who returns to her childhood home after years away, only to uncover signs that her family may be implicated in something far darker than old superstition. Stanwyck brings a calm, authoritative presence that grounds the story in realism, making the gradual intrusion of the supernatural feel all the more unsettling. Moxey keeps the camera patient and observant, letting rooms linger just a second too long to suggest an evil that has been waiting rather than arriving. Unlike flashier occult films of the era, A Taste of Evil thrives on implication. The threat never announces itself. Instead, it reveals itself through ancestry, through secrets passed quietly from one generation to the next. Barbara Parkin's performance adds vulnerability to the unfolding dread, while Olsen's restrained turn reinforces the sense that something is deeply wrong beneath the surface calm. What makes the film disturbing is its intimacy. This isn't about demons erupting into the world, it's about realizing that evil may already be rooted in familiar places, in family history, in tradition, in homes that were meant to protect. Directed by Jack Smite and produced as a two-part television event, Frankenstein, the true story is one of the most ambitious and emotionally devastating horror projects ever made for TV. The film reframes Mary Shelley's myth not as a tale of mad science, but as a tragedy of idealism, obsession, and moral decay. Sarrazin's Victor Frankenstein begins as an earnest, compassionate man, driven by a genuine desire to conquer death. Whiting's creation, however, is not born monstrous. He is gentle, thoughtful, even beautiful at first. A radical choice that makes his eventual corruption heartbreaking rather than frightening. Smite uses this slow transformation to devastating effect, allowing time itself to become the instrument of horror. James Mason brings gravitas and quiet menace as Dr. Polidori, a figure who represents knowledge without conscience, while Jane Seymour embodies innocence caught between devotion and doom. The film unfolds at a measured pace, trusting its audience to sit with regret, failure, and the cost of playing God. What makes Frankenstein the true story disturbing is its patience. It doesn't punish Victor immediately. It lets his dream rot slowly until creation curdles into responsibility he cannot escape. Broadcast into millions of homes, it asked viewers to sit with a terrifying idea that monsters are not born, they are neglected into existence. Directed by Jack Smite and starring Olivia de Havilland alongside Joseph Cotten, The Screaming Woman is a masterclass in television horror, built on paranoia, gaslighting, and the terror of not being believed. Adapted from the story by Ray Bradbury, the film centers on a woman who becomes convinced she hears screams coming from a pit on a nearby estate, a claim everyone around her is disturbingly eager to dismiss. De Havilland delivers a deeply vulnerable performance, her certainty slowly eroded by polite skepticism and calculated concern. Smite stages the film with oppressive restraint, using manicured gardens, well-lit rooms, and civil conversation as tools of menace. Nothing appears overtly wrong, and that's precisely the problem. Every reassurance feels rehearsed. Every denial lands with quiet cruelty. Joseph Cotten plays genial ambiguity, his charm masking something impossible to define, but impossible to ignore. The film's power lies in its methodical dismantling of reality. Is the screaming real? Is it imagined? Or is something far worse occurring just out of sight? Smite never rushes the answer, allowing doubt to fester until certainty itself feels dangerous. What makes The Screaming Woman so disturbing is its cruelty toward innocence. Horror doesn't arrive as violence here. It arrives as dismissal. As the world closes ranks and truth becomes negotiable, the film leaves viewers with a chilling realization that sometimes terror isn't being trapped. It's being silenced. Directed by Paul Wenkos and starring Louis Jourdan and Linda Day George, Fear No Evil is a sleek, unsettling occult thriller that arrived on television just as America's fascination with satanic horror was beginning to take shape. Airing at the very edge of the 1970s, the film feels like a warning broadcast slightly too early. Alien, cold, and quietly blasphemous, Jourdan plays a cultured art dealer whose intellect and sophistication mask a far more sinister truth. Bromberger frames him not as a raving villain, but as a figure of calm inevitability, a man who belongs exactly where he is. Linda Day George brings emotional grounding to the film, her growing unease mirroring the audience's slow recognition that something ancient and deliberate is unfolding. What distinguishes Fear No Evil from other occult stories is its restraint. There are no grand rituals staged for shock value. Instead, supernatural horror creeps in through art, philosophy, and influence. Evil here is persuasive. It speaks softly. It waits for trust before it consumes. The film's urban settings and everyday institutions become conduits rather than safeguards, reinforcing the idea that corruption doesn't need darkness to thrive. Broadcast into living rooms at a time when television still promised safety, Fear No Evil unsettled audiences by suggesting something profoundly uncomfortable, that malevolence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it integrates quietly, admired for its taste and intelligence, until resistance feels futile. Directed by Jeannot Swark and starring Shelley Winters, Belinda Montgomery, and Robert Foxworth, The Devil's Daughter is a stark, grim cult horror that strips away spectacle in favor of fatalism and social pressure. Unlike more sensational occult films of the era, this made-for-TV nightmare unfolds with an almost documentary calm, making its implications feel disturbingly plausible. Shelley Winters delivers a chilling performance as a charismatic cult leader whose authority is rooted not in threats but reassurance. She offers belonging, structure, and spiritual purpose, exactly the things her followers feel denied by the outside world. Montgomery's central performance captures this vulnerability with painful clarity, portraying a young woman drawn into the group not by fear but by comfort and trust. Swark frames the cult as mundane rather than theatrical. Meetings feel orderly, beliefs sound reasonable, and that normality is precisely what makes the horror effective. The film explores how isolation and emotional need can erode resistance, turning consent into submission without ever raising a voice. What makes The Devil's Daughter especially disturbing is its lack of release. There is no explosive revelation, no triumphant escape. The danger here is slow, social, and deeply human. By presenting indoctrination as a process rather than an event, the film leaves viewers with an unsettling truth. Evil doesn't always arrive violently. Sometimes it arrives offering dinner, understanding, and a place to belong. Directed by Wes Craven and starring Linda Blair, Lee Purcell, and Jeremy Slate, Stranger in Our House is one of the most unsettling made-for-TV thrillers of the late 1970s, made all the more disturbing by its calm, affluent suburban setting. Long before Craven became synonymous with theatrical horror, he used television to explore something quieter and more invasive: suspicion as a corrosive force within the family unit. The film follows a teenage girl whose comfortable home life begins to fracture when her troubled cousin moves in after a family tragedy. The newcomer is withdrawn, enigmatic, and immediately commands sympathy, slowly reshaping the emotional balance of the household. The threat here isn't violence, but displacement, the sense of being pushed out of one's own life. Craven avoids spectacle. There are no grand rituals or sensational reveals. Instead, influence is exerted through suggestion, manipulation, and the quiet authority of belief, leaving the audience unsure whether they're witnessing supernatural interference or something far more human. Linda Blair delivers a restrained, vulnerable performance, shedding the shock iconography of The Exorcist in favor of slow, emotional unraveling. Lee Purcell grounds the film in maternal denial, while Jeremy Slate's presence reinforces the adult blindness that allows the situation to escalate. Craven turns ordinary domestic spaces into psychological battlegrounds. What makes Stranger in Our House so disturbing is its plausibility. This isn't horror that arrives from outside. It grows patiently where it isn't questioned, until it feels too late to remove. Directed by Dan Curtis and starring Darren McGavin, The Night Strangler is the darkest and most enduring entry in the Night Stalker saga, a made-for-TV horror that blends urban legend, occult mythology, and serial murder into something quietly unnerving. Airing at a time when television crime stories were meant to reassure, the film instead suggests that order is an illusion and that evil has learned how to adapt. McGavin's Carl Kolchak remains one of television's most compelling investigators, not because he's fearless, but because he's persistent. Curtis frames Kolchak as a man constantly outpaced by institutions uninterested in uncomfortable truths. Police departments dismiss him, authorities stonewall him, and the city itself seems unwilling to acknowledge what's festering beneath its streets. The killer at the center of The Night Strangler is horrifying, not for spectacle, but for his logic. A being who survives by slipping between myth and medicine, history and anonymity. The film's urban settings feel cold, impersonal, and complicit, reinforcing the idea that modern cities are excellent hiding places for ancient evils. What makes The Night Strangler so effective is its refusal to comfort. There is no lasting victory, no sense that the threat is truly contained. Television went dark that night, leaving viewers with an unsettling thought. Some monsters don't haunt castles or forests. They move through crowd, and no one is listening. These films didn't announce themselves as horror. They slipped into living rooms under the cover of routine, familiar faces promising nothing more than an evening's distraction. Instead, they delivered paranoia and the quiet collapse of certainty. If any of these broadcasts still linger with you, let me know which ones unsettled you most in the comments. The 1970s didn't just broadcast these nightmares, it trusted them into our homes, and some of them never really left. And if you want more forgotten horror pulled from television's shadows, subscribe and join Silver Shivers.